I never thought flowers could make me question my marriage. My wife, Emily, had never cared about them. Not once in the 8 years we'd been together had she hinted that she wanted roses, lilies, or anything wrapped in fancy paper. If anything, she'd joke about how flowers were the saddest gift ever. "They're beautiful for a week," she'd say, "then you watch them die." So I stopped thinking about flowers years ago. It wasn't some conscious decision. Life just happened. A mortgage. Long workdays. Unexpected bills. Weekend grocery runs instead of date nights. The kind of marriage where you're partners more than anything else. I honestly thought we were happy. Maybe not movie romance happy, but comfortable. Safe. The kind of relationship people spend years trying to find. Then one Friday, she came home carrying a bouquet. Bright yellow tulips. I looked up from the couch. "Those are nice." She smiled. "They are." She filled a vase with water, trimmed the stems like she'd done it 100 times before, placed them in the kitchen, and started making dinner. That was it. No explanation. No story. I didn't think much of it. The next Friday. Different flowers. White lilies this time. Again she walked in smiling. Again straight into a vase. Again, nothing. By the fourth Friday, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Every single week. New flowers. Always fresh. Always expensive enough that someone had clearly spent money on them. I found myself staring at the bouquet while pretending to watch TV. Emily noticed. "You okay?" "Yeah." "You've been looking at those flowers for like 5 minutes." I laughed. "I guess they're growing on me?" She smiled. "I'm glad." That answer somehow made everything worse. Because it sounded prepared, almost rehearsed. For the first time in our marriage, a stupid thought crossed my mind. Who keeps buying my wife flowers? I hated myself for even thinking it. Emily had never given me a reason not to trust her. Never hid her phone. Never stayed out late. Never acted suspicious. But flowers. Flowers mean something. Don't they? The next week I casually asked, "So, where'd you get these?" She didn't even hesitate. "The flower shop." I waited. Nothing else. So what? Who bought them?" She looked confused. "I did." I laughed. "No, seriously. I am serious." Then, she kissed my cheek, grabbed her coffee and walked upstairs. That should have been the end of it. But somehow, it wasn't. Because something about the way she answered didn't make me feel relieved. It made me feel even more curious. Why would someone who never cared about flowers suddenly start buying herself a bouquet every single Friday? It didn't make sense. A week later, I left work early. Not because I wanted to catch her cheating. At least that's what I kept telling myself. I just wanted an answer. I parked across the street from her office. 20 minutes later, she walked out. She wasn't meeting anyone. She wasn't looking around nervously. She simply got into her car and drove away. I followed from a distance. She stopped exactly where she'd said she did. A small, local flower shop. She walked inside alone. 10 minutes later, she came back carrying another bouquet. She paid with her own card. No mysterious man. No secret admirer. No hidden messages. Just flowers. I should have felt ridiculous. Instead, I felt even more confused. Because if she was buying them herself, then why did it feel like I was the one who was missing something? The drive home felt longer than usual. Not because of traffic. Because I couldn't stop replaying what I'd just seen. She wasn't lying. She really was buying the flowers herself. So why hide it behind those vague answers? When I walked through the front door, the bouquet was already sitting in the middle of our kitchen table. Soft pink peonies. Her favorite color. I'd never noticed that before. Emily was chopping vegetables. She smiled the second she saw me. "You're home early." "Yeah." "Everything okay at work?" "Fine." I wanted to tell her I'd followed her. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen island and stared at the flowers again. She noticed. Again. "You really don't like them, do you?" "What?" "The flowers." "I never said that." "You don't have to." She continued cutting carrots. I can tell. Something about that sentence bothered me. Not because it was defensive. Because it sounded tired. Like we'd had this conversation 100 times before. Except we hadn't. Or maybe we had. Just not with words. Dinner was unusually quiet. After we cleaned up, she sat on the couch with her book while I pretended to watch television. Neither of us was paying attention. Finally, I muted the TV. Can I ask you something? She looked up. Sure. Why do you buy yourself flowers every Friday? She held my gaze for a few seconds. I like having them in the house. You never used to. No. So, what changed? She looked back down at her book. I did. That answer only frustrated me more. Emily, I'm serious. I don't understand. I know. Silence filled the room. Finally, she closed the book. You really want to know? Yes. She nodded slowly. Okay. Then, she asked me a question instead. When was the last time you surprised me? I frowned. What? When was the last time you planned something just because you knew it'd make me smile? I couldn't answer. Not immediately. She waited. I searched my memory. Birthday? No. That had been dinner she'd booked herself because my project at work ran late. Anniversary? We'd ordered takeaway. Christmas? Gift cards. Valentine's Day? I honestly couldn't remember. She wasn't angry. She simply watched me realize it. You see? I work hard for us. I know. I do everything I can. I know. I've never stopped loving you. I know. Every answer came calmly. Without sarcasm. Without blame. Which somehow made it worse. Then she reached for one of the flowers. She gently touched a petal. You know what the saddest part is? I stayed quiet. I don't even miss getting flowers. I looked at her. I miss feeling thought about. The words hit harder than I expected. She wasn't talking about bouquets anymore. I don't need expensive gifts. I don't need jewelry. I don't need vacations. She smiled sadly. I just missed those little moments where I'd realize, you were at the supermarket and saw my favorite chocolate. Or passed a bakery and brought home one cinnamon roll because you knew I'd love it. Or texted me during the day because something reminded you of me. She laughed softly. You used to do that all the time. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Because she was right. When we first dated, I'd drive 20 minutes just to leave coffee outside her office. I'd buy sunflowers because she'd once mentioned they reminded her of childhood. I'd hide little notes in her bag. None of it cost much. I'd simply stopped. Not on purpose. Life had become routines. Responsibilities. Bills. Work. Gym. Sleep. Repeat. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that loving her and showing it were the same thing. She quietly proved they weren't. Then she looked at me and asked one question. A question I still couldn't answer. When was the last time you did something for me that wasn't on a calendar? I stared at her. My mind went completely blank. Because birthdays don't count. Anniversaries don't count. Christmas doesn't count. She wasn't asking if I remembered important dates. She was asking if I ever thought about her on an ordinary Tuesday. And the truth terrified me. I couldn't remember the last time I had. I barely slept that night. Not because we argued. We didn't. Emily went upstairs around 10, kissed me on the forehead like she always did, and whispered, "Good night." Like nothing had happened. I stayed downstairs staring at the flowers until almost midnight. For the first time in years, I realized I couldn't remember what her favorite flower actually was. Not because she'd never told me. Because I'd stopped listening. The next morning, I opened an old box in the garage. It was full of random things we'd kept from when we first started dating. Movie tickets. Hotel key cards. Birthday cards. A receipt from a gas station where we'd stopped during our first road trip. Then I found a tiny folded piece of paper. One of my old notes. It simply said, Saw these and thought of you. It had been wrapped around a single sunflower. I remembered that day instantly. She'd cried over one stupid flower. Not because it was expensive, because I'd been thinking about her while she wasn't there. I sat on the garage floor for almost 20 minutes, wondering, when had I stopped being that man? The following Friday arrived. I left work an hour early. Not because I had a grand plan, because I wanted to beat her home. I drove to the same flower shop I'd followed her to the week before. The woman behind the counter smiled. "Can I help you?" I looked around awkwardly. "I honestly have no idea what I'm doing." She laughed. "Buying flowers for the first time? It shows?" "A little." I smiled. "My wife usually buys them herself." The florist paused. "Oh." She didn't laugh anymore. Instead, she quietly asked, "Emily?" I blinked. "Yeah." She smiled softly. "I thought you might come in one day." That caught me completely off guard. "What do you mean?" She looked at the flowers before answering. "Every Friday she comes in." "I know." She always spends about 10 minutes walking around. Then she said something that hit me like a truck. She never asks which flowers are the prettiest. I frowned. "What does she ask?" The florist smiled sadly. "She always asks, which ones look like someone chose them with love. ... I couldn't speak. The florist looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't have told you that." But I was already somewhere else. Because suddenly, I understood. Emily wasn't buying flowers. She was buying the feeling she'd been missing. I picked a bouquet. Not the biggest. Not the most expensive. Just the one I knew she'd stop to look at. Sunflowers. The same ones I'd surprised her with years ago. When she walked through the front door that evening, she froze. The flowers were already sitting on the kitchen table. Next to them was another folded piece of paper. Exactly like the one I'd written years ago. It said only 6 words. "I saw these and thought of you." She stood there for a long time. Neither of us spoke. Finally, she looked at me. "You remembered?" I nodded. I remembered who I used to be. She smiled. Then, for the first time in months, she cried. Not because of the flowers. Because someone had thought about her before she walked through the front door. That night, we talked for hours. About everything. Not the flowers. Us. How we'd mistaken routine for intimacy. How we'd started measuring love by responsibilities instead of attention. How easy it is to believe you're showing someone they're loved, when all you're really doing is keeping life running. It's been almost a year now. Every Friday. There are still fresh flowers in our kitchen. Sometimes I buy them. Sometimes she does. Sometimes we stop at the flower shop together on the way home. But that's not what changed our marriage. The flowers were never the point. The point was this. Love doesn't slowly disappear because people stop caring. It disappears when they stop noticing. And sometimes, the smallest reminder is enough to help you notice each other again.